New details are emerging on Nick Reiner as he awaits trial. How will they affect his case? Criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool is next. New details are emerging on Nick Reiner's mental illness and substance abuse struggles as he awaits trial. His defense attorney is now weighing a possibility insanity plea over alleged slaying of his parents. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool. Brian, thanks for joining us this afternoon. You look at some of the reporting here. This is just one example from NBC News that Nick Reiner's medication for schizophrenia was adjusted before his parents' killings, sources say. And the idea here, there was a report out of TMZ too, is that the adjusting of the medication changed his behavior, made him more violent. How does that play into his defense?
Yeah, hey, Greg, good to be with you. Merry Christmas, by the way. Yeah, look, Alan Jackson's likely to argue insanity, but I've been practicing law quite a while in Los Angeles County. It's extremely difficult to prevail on insanity. Why? Because you got to prove two things. One, what you're talking about is a severe mental defect. It has to be something like psychosis, schizophrenia, where somebody's hearing demons in their head, or they're having hallucinations, for example, where they can't connect their mind with reality, right? That's the first thing. The second prong, it's called the McNaughton test here in California, is that Nick Reiner couldn't distinguish right from wrong. So that's what you've got to prove. Why is that difficult here in California? Because first of all, you've got an argument that took place at a party. You got to focus on what happened. There's an argument. Then a few hours go by, we think, right? The autopsy is going to be important to determine time of death. If a few hours went by from where Nick's at the party to where he murders his parents, the prosecutors are going to argue he knew what he was doing. He went out. Did he go get a knife? Where did he get the knife? How did he plot this crime? That's going to suggest he knew what he was doing. So it's a hard defense. And you've got Rob Reiner. He's an icon. He's an entertainment guru. You know, I'm a big fan of A Few Good Men. Remember that movie? I mean, you're going to have a jury that likes him. So that it's going to be a difficult defense. And look, I learned in 2016, Nick Reiner was on Access Hollywood, and he says, look, I can get crazy at times. You don't want to set me off. Rest assured, prosecutors are going to bring up all the social media posts in the last few years of his life to show that he knew what he was doing, and he's simply just a violent person.
Do you think that all the publicity around this, and especially all that we've learned about Nick Reiner, a lot of this now is about his past, about his troubled past, about how his parents tried to help him? How does that change the contours of the case? Even if it isn't a successful insanity plea, does it change maybe the charges he'll see, the sentencing against him?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, Ashley, right? Because you've got some sympathy that is inuring to Rob Reiner and his wife, right? They really tried to help Nick. He's in and out of rehab for 18 years. And by the way, a drug addiction would not qualify for insanity. But moving forward on this, to your point, I think the viable defense here that has more traction for Nick Reiner is a doctrine out here in California called diminished actuality. What does that mean? It's kind of what you're talking about, which is that Nick was incapable of forming the intent, right? He might have known right from wrong, but he wasn't able to build the intent to commit the crime because of the drug addiction. Why is that significant? Because if he prevailed on that defense at trial, it's not an absolute defense. He's not going to walk scot-free, which I don't think a jury is going to do in West Los Angeles. What it will do is it negates intent, drops the charge down to manslaughter, right? And then you're looking at maybe 10, 11 years in jail for each murder. But to your point, then at sentencing, he can use all the mental health issues for a mitigation, and he might only eventually do 10, 15 years in prison, and he lives to see another day.
Brian, all of that's surrounding this case, how long do you think it's going to take to get to the conclusion?
Yeah, another good question. Look, in Southern California here in Los Angeles, murder trials take a while. I'd be shocked if this case goes to trial next year, and here's a big reason why. You've got Nick Reiner going to 18 different rehab facilities. Rest assured, every single record that has been generated regarding his treatment is going to have to be retrieved and dissected by mental health experts. You got to look at, like you were talking about, what drugs were administered, what were the diagnoses at each facility that he attended. That takes time. You've got to get all the records, get them assimilated, exchange them. Then you've got to have experts peruse through all of these documents to form opinions for the case. So it's going to take a while.
Yeah, this is going to drag on. Brian Claypool, criminal defense attorney, thanks so much for joining us.